Okay, welcome. This is our third week already. Um, Today we're gonna see a little bit of news again to start with. Then I will do a small pizarra, so you can start to think of what you think are the characteristics of life. It will be about that, and then we will see this content about characteristics of life in Canvas. And tomorrow, not today, tomorrow we will already do a little quiz. It's more exercise than really quiz. Very simple, so pay attention so you can do a good quiz tomorrow. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is the following thing. Let's make a discussion out of it. So first case of coronavirus reinfection confirmed. So the first case was in Hong Kong, and then this is reported by Life Science. And then later, there is other reinfections confirmed in Belgium and Netherlands. Okay, you know, I just show you Netherlands is here. In fact, I have some love for the Netherlands because my father is from the Netherlands. My mother is more from Belgium, French area. My grandfather has French origins, and I'm from Belgium. That's here, but in fact, I'm half from the Netherlands. The Netherlands is a very interesting country because it's one of the lowest laying countries in the world, about 60–70%. All of this area you can see here is below sea level. And yeah, they have some challenges for the future to keep the sea out. But the Dutchmen are very inventive. They will find something against it. It's a beautiful country. It's one of the flattest countries. It's a very rich country, and they speak the same language as we do here in the north of Belgium. So Belgium has two parts, which is here the north, which we call Flanders. It's all here, and then the big southern part, it's French spoken. Okay, here. But here we speak Flemish and here Dutch, but basically Flemish and Dutch is the same thing. So this is the Netherlands. And then the other confirmed case was in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a Chinese city. Also, I don't know, interesting to mention about Hong Kong. It's a bit special because it's also autonomic zone. It used to be part of the English Empire, and then some years ago they gave it back to China. And nowadays you hear a lot in the news about Hong Kong issues because Hong Kong wants to stay more or less independent with the advantages they had before. You see, this is Hong Kong, this peninsula, you can say, and it's just next to Shenzhen, which is another city with millions of Chinese. So this is like a special place, Hong Kong, and now there's a lot of problems because they're more used. It was already capitalist 50 years ago. It was never under Chinese control, and now China is trying to get more influence over Hong Kong by building enormous bridges and introducing new laws. But you see its location is next to Macau, which is the biggest gambling city in the world, Shenzhen, which is a very big economical center. But also in Hong Kong, we have uh, so this coronavirus reinfection confirmed. So this is an important biological thing I want to talk to you. Why is this something that interests us? If we have people that got reinfected with coronavirus after 3–4 months, why is that worrying?
Because maybe if you have the cure, you can get infected or have the side effects.
Yeah,
right?
Very good point, Emilio. Exactly, it's what you say. I mean, if you had coronavirus and then 2–3 months later you get it again, two things might have happened. One, your immune system is not developing the immune reaction it does for other infections, let's say. So your body gets reinfected, so it means that your immune system is not working good enough to fight the virus. Okay, so I mean it works maybe good enough, but you can get infected again. This is already worrisome because it means that your immunity is not super immunity. It means that you're not immune because you get reinfected. What else can that mean?
Like I see people who go to parties to get infected, because they say, oh, I'll only get it once, and I'll just get over it. I'll just get over with it right now, and then I'll be good for the rest of the pandemic. I won't be able to get it again.
Okay,
But now,
but
well, that's like one more risk.
yeah, do you think that makes sense doing this if you can get reinfected?
No.
No, of course not. So that's why this news is a little bit worrisome, because look, there is two things happening here. People can get reinfected, so that means two things. Or our immune system is not developing a strong enough immune response that makes us immune for a very long period of time. That's one thing. The second thing is, why is that happening? So maybe the virus is changing. We all know you can get the flu more than once, but it's very unlikely, okay? You only get the flu twice a year if it's a different kind of virus, if it's a different kind of strain that you get infected with. So this might indicate that this coronavirus has different kind of strains, or it might indicate that the immune response that our body develops against the virus is not as strong as we thought. So if we look to the future, and let's assume that our immune system cannot develop a strong enough immune response to get the virus out, what would that mean for the future when you think about that there is 150 vaccines in development?
Maybe none of them are. Maybe none of them work.
Yeah, interesting point. Of course, I don't have all the answers, Santiago. I'm just asking the questions, but exactly what you say, that's what I believe. That's what I'm thinking as well. Like, how many of those vaccines will be effective? Maybe they will be effective for some months, but maybe they will be not effective at all. So it might indicate that we have to vaccinate more than once a year in order to have a good immune response. So this is something worrisome, you know. Of course, the good news is here, if you read the articles, you can see that that the people that got reinfected, they didn't get really sick about it, okay? Okay, they were saying here that, okay, we expected it kind of, somehow we expected it. But on the other hand, they didn't get very strong symptoms. So it might indicate that the immune response is working a little bit, but the fact that we get infected again is worrisome. So here you see Marek van Rans. This was my professor in the University of Lovina. He is our virologist in Belgium. And he also said it's really not good news because it might imply things that we don't know yet. So I don't have all the answers. A lot still has to be discovered, but I'm just putting the situation in front of you that yeah, that this is the thinking we have to do. You know, is our immune response strong enough? Is the virus mutating? And will the vaccines work? Okay, that's really the question that we have now with what we see, and it doesn't really look that well. Somebody else wants to say something about this, because I thought it was important to start the day with this thing because it affects us all.
I have a question.
Yes.
Where does a virus can evolve, inside a human body or outside, like in the earth? And it's like a host, right, to evolve.
Mm-hmm. Good question, Emilio. The virus can evolve. Mostly, it's inside the body, because as we will see in a moment, there is something special about life, and this introduces me to the characteristics of life. So, is a virus alive or not? That's the question, really, because it doesn't fulfill all the requirements of a thing that is alive. Um, a virus need a host, what you say, and in the host it can duplicate its DNA. So mainly when a virus evolves, it needs a host to do that. It cannot do it outside the host. So that's basically the answer. How much it evolves, we don't know. It depends virus to virus. But we come back to this in a moment. Let's. I want to share screen and I want to do a quick pisada. The question of today is before we start. A ver, Pizarra, no. One second, please. There it is. The question is, what are the characteristics of life. Okay, not for points, it's just please write something here what you think are characteristics of life. What I mean with the question, what is the characteristic of life, is basically that you tell me what makes something that is alive alive. So why life is life, basically. So which properties has life that makes it life? So please write it on the pizarra.
I think it's blocked.
No, there's already people writing things. Reproduction is a good one. Breathing, yeah, somehow breathing as well. Adaptation, very good, Ana Sofia. We adapt to our environment. Yeah, we consume energy for sure. Stimulus also, eh? Think about a plant that turns to the sun. So we always, life always responds to stimuli of the environment. Evolution, definitely, we know that life evolves. We have proof of that. This is not a theory. We're going to see that later on, which is the evidence we have that evolution is true. Growth, definitely. Life is always growing. Development. Okay, so it's going to be easy. It's going to be easy for you because there were some important things missing, but that's what we're going to see today. So I stop the pizarra. Homeostasis, who says that? That's very important. Homeostasis, I will explain also today what homeostasis is. It's very important, homeostasis. Consciousness, not really. I don't think a bacteria has consciousness. Maybe intelligent life, if we talk about mammals. In fact, humans are the only animals that are known to be conscient. Glucose, yeah, made by cells. Made by cells is a good one as well. Okay, think you got it. Okay, let's start. Let's have a look at what the characteristics of life are. Let me just open the module, please. It's a simple class. It's a simple class today. But it's an important one because we have to know a little bit the basics of life to understand it. Okay, so it's important what we're going to say today. You can, in fact, you had all the answers behind me. I don't know if you noticed the characteristics of life. There's the 8 of them. I mean, I'm blocking them a little bit, but they were there. Okay, here we have them: organization and complexity, metabolism, homeostasis, growth, reproduction, irritability or reaction to stimuli, and evolution. Okay, guys, I'm going to quickly show you this TikTok. It's not the greatest TikTok, I've seen way better, but it shows something that I think it's important, especially for you, how to study. I already told you this, that I do recommend that you make your own notes, and the TikTok is saying basically this, you know, try to, let's have a look, try to make nice notes, because I really want you to study well. So let's share the comparative.
That it was meant to be. Call it quits, call it destiny. Just because it won't come easily. Don't you tell me that it was meant to be. Call it quits, call it destiny. Just because it won't come easily. Don't you tell me that it was meant to be.
So this can you hear me? Yes. This BioNinja is basically a website of biology where you can upgrade your notes a little bit. I'm not saying you have to use BioNinja. You can also use what we have here. My point being, I really think it's important you make good notes, because now it might seem simple. We only have characteristics of life. We only have seen what is science. We have only seen the scientific method. But in the end of the semester, it will be a lot. And if you have of every topic like 1 or 2 pages, and you make it in a nice little booklet of you, then you have everything together, and it will be way easier to study. So whenever you have problems or you fail, it's one of the things I will ask you. Show me what you did to summarize and to collect your information in one point, okay? So organization and complexity. When we look at this, is that this is one of the things we use to recognize life, okay? Organization and complexity, it's something very important. Let me show you a picture. Um, um, I'm not sharing anymore, right? I mean, always make a mess.
No.
Mm. Yeah, I have too many screens open. It makes it a bit complex. So I wanted to show you this picture. When scientists look at fossils or something, whenever you see life, look at this jellyfish, look at the girl, look at the spider web, look at the flower, what do you immediately recognize? It's complex, it's organized, right? What else do you see that is very striking here? It's typical for life, typical.
The colors.
Yes, colors, but also
Symmetry.
Sorry?
Symmetry.
Symmetry. He said symmetry.
Yeah, very good. Symmetry is something really important. It doesn't matter if you look at a beautiful girl, a jellyfish, a flower, a spider web. Symmetry and organization and complexity. Look how complex a spider web is. This is always a characteristic of life. This is something typical. So whenever you open up a rock, you hit a rock in the mountains, and you say like, I see something symmetry. You can be sure it's a fossil. You can be sure it's ancient plant life. It could be some kind of animal. If you see symmetry, it doesn't exist. Asymmetry in nature is something really, really rare. It really indicates that it's alive, because in nature, things always tend to go to the highest level of disorganization possible. And if you have organization and complexity, it's a clear indication that it's life, okay? Metabolism. Metabolism is referring to the fact that all animals eat, and they convert the or the energy that they get can be sunlight or can be food, you know, for animals that eat, and they convert it, and that's what we call metabolism. And metabolism is necessary to have this level of organization and complexity. Metabolism is necessary to grow and to repair things and to maintain homeostasis, okay? This brings us to the next point, which is homeostasis. Homeostasis is a very important point, okay? Homeostasis, it's a difficult word, but think always about balance, equilibrium, okay? Something that is alive always tries to be in balance with nature around it. So it keeps an equilibrium, you know, it's a balance of internal environment, temperature, salts, water, nutrients, all of this, you know. In fact, the whole planet has to be in homeostasis. I mean, we have to be in balance with the trees and the other animals. And from the moment that something goes out of balance, you get disturbances. And that's the same thing with the human body. If a human body is in homeostasis, in good homeostasis, it means that you're healthy. From the moment that homeostasis is interrupted, then, for instance, bacteria might be stronger than your body and you get sick. So when homeostasis is disrupted, it always indicates that a body, you get a human or an organism can go sick, okay, or even die. So The other one is growth. Growth, all organisms grow. Okay, you know what growing is, very simple. All organisms reproduce. This can be sexual or asexual. Okay, we humans reproduce asexual, but there is lots of bacteria and certain plants that can reproduce asexual. Okay, reaction to stimuli, it's another characteristic. Reaction to stimuli is, for instance, a plant that turns to the sun, or an animal that goes away from the sun, or a certain organism that goes away from dangerous situations. So we're always in constant interaction with and our environment. If an ant goes to something sweet or goes to food, that's reaction to the environment. Okay, evolution as well. So we know all living things adapt to the environment, and in time they evolve. Okay, but this is not from one organism to another. It takes generations. Okay, there is one thing missing here. Who can tell me what? Because I mean, we have 7, but in fact it's 8, and there is one important one missing here. Please write it down that you don't forget it, because it's an important one, in fact.
So breathing or concept?
No, breathing would enter in metabolism, because we need oxygen to...
Consciousness?
Sorry? No,
Adapting.
Consciousness?
plants are not conscient. Bacteria are...
Adapting.
Sorry?
Adaptation, adapting to the environment.
No, we have that already. Adapting to the environment is the
Learning?
An energy source.
No. Think about the molecules inside the cell. All life has been detected with a certain type of molecule inside of the cells.
DNA?
Yeah, exactly.
Atoms?
Yeah, it's
DNA.
that one, DNA. All life has DNA, or the variant of DNA, which is RNA. All life has this molecule inside it. It's the genetic code of which all life is made. Okay, so that's another important one. So let's watch the video. Okay.
Excuse me, is this on Canvas?
Yeah, of course it's on Canvas. Yes, I'm doing it like this. So let's watch the video. This is a video about life. Okay, so what are the characteristics of life? I learned now how to share the sound of the computer, so that's also nice. So I don't have to do it over the microphone anymore. It was very simple. It was just a click away, but I had to find it. Okay, play.
Have you ever seen those toys that you can put in water for a few days and then they increase in size? They always have this label on the package like, grows 1,000,000 times larger in water. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but they do grow impressively larger. I had one once. It was a pony. I had dreams for it to grow especially large, so to give it plenty of room, it spent several days in a bathtub. And while it did technically grow larger, the dreams I had imagined for it did not really come to be. The fact that it could increase in size sort of gave me some kind of thought in my mind that it just might be alive, because things that are alive do grow, right? Combine that with my overactive imagination, and it was difficult for me to come back to reality that this toy pony may increase in size, but it's not alive. When we talk about biological growth and development, this type of increase in size is not the same thing. And if we're going to truly explore biology, the study of life, it makes it essential that we understand characteristics of things that are alive. Life is difficult to define, but the characteristics of living things can be explored. We want to mention right here, before we get started, that what makes an organism alive still results in a lot of questioning by biologists. Hey, remember, there are many organisms undiscovered on our own planet, and new information revealed in biological sciences all the time. So this is our disclaimer that this information can change and is still debated. Kind of like what we mentioned in our classification video. This is why we are not going to give a certain numerical value for how many characteristics of life there are, because we do not want to imply that they are in a specific order or that what we are listing cannot be expanded upon. or that this can't include exceptions that we may not mention. Also, the characteristics we talk about here can certainly be titled differently. See, we're not trying to talk about a list that one would memorize here. Our goal is actually to get you thinking about what it means for an organism to be alive and characteristics of life that can be explored when trying to study living things. Okay, so let's get started with some characteristics. Organization. We can look at the cell theory here and see that, according to this theory, living organisms are made of cells. Some organisms are unicellular, so they can be made up of just one cell. But more complex organisms, like this pony here, are multicellular and therefore can be made up of many cells, which can be arranged into tissues. The tissues can make up organs. The organs can be part of an organ system. These are biological levels of organization. As for our bathtub-grown pony, no cells. Homeostasis. Maintaining a regulated balance is so important for many biological processes to even happen. For example, enzymes typically need a certain pH range to even work correctly. Maintaining homeostasis can mean maintaining a certain temperature and a certain percentage of water concentration. Ponies and your human body have all kinds of feedback systems in place to maintain homeostasis. But even a single-celled organism, like an amoeba, relies on its cell membrane to maintain homeostasis internally. Living organisms have regulation of homeostasis, which is not going on here in bathtub-grown pony. Metabolism. If you're alive, you need to have some way to capture energy and use energy for processes, including some processes that keep homeostasis, like mentioned previously. Chemical reactions happening in living organisms are part of metabolism. So just to give some examples of reactions that are part of metabolism in living organisms, plants are autotrophs that can capture light energy to make glucose in a process known as photosynthesis. Animals are heterotrophs that typically need to eat something and then digest it in order to obtain glucose. Both of these example organisms break down glucose in cellular respiration to make ATP energy. Metabolism is happening in this pony, but not in bathtub pony. Reproduction. This can be very simple, like unicellular bacteria, which can copy DNA and split into two, and now you have two bacteria. Or it can be more complex, like this living pony, which involves sperm and egg cells uniting to make a fertilized egg known as a zygote, which will eventually develop into a baby pony. No reproduction for this bathtub-grown pony. Growth and development. Living organisms have genetic material to code for development and growth. A baby pony will develop and grow up into a grown-up pony because its genetic material contains the instructions for this development and growth. Bathtub-grown pony may increase in size due to water entering it, but it's not growing and developing based on genetic instructions. Response to stimuli. Responding to stimuli is often considered a characteristic of life. There can be internal and external stimuli. If this pony feels the need to eat, this can be due to coordination of many body systems internally alerting the pony that it is hungry. If this pony senses danger, this external stimulus may cause it to flee. Not so for a bathtub pony. But you know, a response to a stimulus might not be obvious. I used to have a lot of cacti when I was a kid, and while I wouldn't call them especially exciting when I was a kid, I did notice that if I left them in a windowsill and didn't rotate them, they would bend, at least over a period of a few weeks. That's amazing because they are responding to light. Plants responding to light is a response to a stimulus. Evolution. A working definition of life, summarized by Dr. Gerald Joyce as part of a panel of exobiologists, describes life as, quote, a self-sustaining system capable of Darwinian evolution, end quote. Fascinating quote. Many scientists view the process of evolution as a characteristic of life, although this would occur over a period of time. The gene frequencies in a population of living organisms can change over time due to mechanisms, such as natural selection. Some genes can code for certain traits that result in higher reproductive fitness, while some genes may code for traits that lower reproductive fitness, and therefore may be selected against. Over time, these can result in adaptations. Because the bathtub pony cannot even reproduce in the first place, you won't see this. characteristics of life are definitely intriguing to explore. Remember that these are characteristics that can be adjusted or potentially have exceptions. Some things are very hard to classify. Take viruses. In our virus video, we talk about how viruses are considered by the majority of scientists to not be living. Viruses, with their genetic material, can reproduce, although they need a host to reproduce. They can evolve, but overall they seem to lack a lot of the other characteristics of life and aren't typically classified as living. It's also interesting to think about the potential of extraterrestrial life, that is, life that is not on Earth. Would it still have these characteristics of life that we have discussed? Sometimes as science we find ourselves with even more questions. Well, that's it for the Amoeba Sisters, and we remind you to stay curious.
So this is a nice video, in fact, that explains us a little bit the characteristics of life. I put it in numbers because, I mean, we have certain points that are characteristic of life, but the video is right about the fact we cannot put them in the correct, in really an order that this is the most important. It's just easier to know, okay, there are 7 or 8, depending on what you take into account. See. And so this is, but in fact, they're right. There is not one more important than the other one. It's still changing. Take that into account. There's things that we still don't know. This brings me to the next thing that also the video talked about in the end a little bit. And when we talk about the coronavirus as well, are virus really alive? You know, I mean, it has certain characteristics of life and others not, you know. So there's an article here about viruses. I hope it loads. Yeah. So because they lack many features that are hallmarks of life. Okay. Some viruses have DNA, other they don't. They have RNA. Virus, you cannot really see them as a cell, you know. It's more like a nucleo, and they inject the DNA. They always need a certain host to duplicate. So this is a little bit into discussion, you know. If you ask me, I do think it's life, because it's something that reproduces. It's made of biological matter, and I think it is a life. However, it's a type of life that cannot live alone, you know. If you think about other organisms, there's also other organisms in the world that need other organisms to live, you know. If you think about certain symbiosis, a certain plant always needs to grow on that kind of tree, otherwise it cannot live. So there is things that are considering that you can consider that viruses are alive, others not. If you ask me, I think it's more alive than not alive, because it's really a biological thing, you know. It's one of the smallest things, biological things that exist, you know. They're like 100 or 1,000 times smaller than bacteria. So I think there is still a lot not understood about virus. And don't forget, you all know how powerful they are, you know. You can see what viruses can do to us. I mean, the most deadly virus in the world is rabies. You have heard of rabies? That kills about 90% of the people that is infected with it. This one of the second deadliest viruses in the world is Ebola virus, which can have a mortality of 70%. If you think about influenza, mortality is only about 10 to 30%. And then Ebola, our coronavirus of now, has a mortality of 2-3%. Okay. If you think about coronavirus, let's assume that we don't have a vaccine that works, and let's assume that we don't have a way to eliminate the virus. We know that the coronavirus has a mortality of 2 to 3%. We are almost 8 billion people. 8 billion people is 8 with 9 zeros. Okay, so if you would take 2 or 3% of this, then it would mean that about 200 million people in the world would die of coronavirus. if we don't find a cure. I think this is an interesting thing you can think about. How many deaths do we have now? I think we're about not even 1 million, and we're at 700,000, I think, deaths more or less. So that's about that. And then today we're gonna finish the class with a small video about death or alive, because it's an important thing to think about. You know, when we die, a lot of our cells are still alive. So what makes us alive? In fact, it's something you can wonder about. Okay, it's what makes us alive. It's the fact that we have brain activity. But you all know that there is, for instance, cases in the hospital that are brain dead. Are they still alive because their heart is still beating, or are they not alive anymore because the brain is not functioning anymore? So the more complex life becomes, the more difficult it is to define really if it's still alive or not, especially in humans. Okay, so let's have a look at this video. And this with this we end the class. And what I also wanted to tell you, don't forget to study a little bit those 7-8 characteristics of life, because tomorrow we do a little quiz about it. Okay?
Different from dead stuff, or is it?
Mister, no se ve.
Sorry, you cannot see it, or you can hear it?
Both.
Ah, okay, sorry. Let me fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah, now yes, okay.
Mr. Erwin Schrödinger defined life this way.
Living things avoid decay into disorder and
Equilibrium. What does this mean? Let's pretend that your download folder is the universe. It started orderly and got more and more chaotic over time. By investing energy, you can create order and clean it up. This is what living things do. But what is life? Every living thing on this planet is made of cells. Basically, a cell is a protein-based robot too small to feel or experience anything. It has the properties we just assigned to life. It has a wall that separates it from the surroundings, creating order. It regulates itself and maintains a constant state. It eats stuff to stay alive. It grows and develops. It reacts to the environment, and it's subject to evolution. And it makes more of itself. But of all the stuff that makes up a cell, no part is alive. Stuff reacts chemically with other stuff, forming reactions that start other reactions, which start other reactions. In a single cell every second, several million chemical reactions take place, forming a complex orchestra. A cell can build several thousand types of protein, some very simple, some complex micromachines. Imagine driving a car at 100 kilometers an hour while constantly rebuilding every single part of it with stuff you collect from the street. That is what cells do. But no part of the cell is alive. Everything is dead matter moved by the laws of the universe. So is life the aggregate of all these reaction processes that are taking place? Eventually, every living thing will die. The goal of the whole process is to prevent this by producing new entities. And by this, we mean DNA. Life is, in a way, just a lot of stuff that carries genetic information around. Every living thing is subject to evolution, and the DNA that develops the best living thing around it will stay in the game. So, is DNA life then? If you take DNA out of its hull, it certainly is a very complex molecule, but it can't do anything by itself. This is where viruses make everything more complicated. They are basically strings of RNA or DNA in a small hull and need cells to do something. We're not sure if they count as living or dead. And still, there are 225 million cubic meters of viruses on Earth. They don't seem to care what we think of them. There are even viruses that invade dead cells and reanimate them so they can be a host for them, which blurs the line even more. Or mitochondria. They are the power plants of most complex cells and were previously free living bacteria that entered a partnership with bigger cells. They still have their own DNA and can multiply on their own, but they are not alive anymore. They are dead. So they traded their own life for the survival of their DNA, which means living things can evolve into dead things as long as it's beneficial to their genetic code. So maybe life is information that manages to ensure its continued existence. But what about AI, artificial intelligence? By our most common definitions, we are very close to creating artificial life in computers. It's just a question of time before the technology we build gets there. And this is not science fiction either. There are a lot of smart people actively working on this. You could already argue that computer viruses are alive. Okay, so what is life then? Things? Processes? DNA? Information? This got confusing very fast. One thing is for sure, the idea that life is fundamentally different from non-living things because they contain some non-physical element or are governed by different principles than inanimate objects turns out to be wrong. Before Charles Darwin, humans drew a line between themselves and the rest of living things. There was something magical about us that made us special. Once we had to accept we are, like every living being, a product of evolution, we drew a different line. But the more we learn about what computers can do and how life works, the closer we get to creating the first machine that fits our description of life, the more our image of ourselves is in danger again. And this will happen sooner or later. And here's another question for you. If everything in the universe is made of the same stuff, does this mean everything in the universe is dead, or that everything in the universe is alive? That it's just a question of complexity? Does this mean we can never die because we were never alive in the first place? Is life and death an irrelevant question, and we haven't noticed it yet? Is it possible we are much more part of the universe around us than we thought? Don't look at us. We don't have any answers for you, just questions for you to think about. After all, it's thinking about questions like this that makes us feel alive and gives us some comfort.
So with this video, I wanted to end the class, and I think it's a very nice video because it really makes you notice how complex things are. You know, are things alive? Are things not alive? What makes it alive? And you can even go further than that. What's the purpose of life? Why are we here? Why is life on planet Earth? Is there life in the universe? We don't have those answers. We really don't know. We just know that it's here. But if you look at biology, there is one interesting thing, and it's clear that life reproduces, and it's clear that everything is interconnected with each other. And I think this is a nice thought, you know, that maybe we shouldn't ask ourselves why we are alive and why we are here. It's just we are here because we had to be here. It's because we are a product of the life, the laws of nature, and nothing is coincidence. So this is really what I think about life, you know, that every life has a purpose. And again, I like this saying is that we are a consequence of the laws of nature. We had to be here, okay? And the fact that we are not a coincidence and we are a consequence and a product of the laws of nature, it means that we have a clear purpose. But maybe this purpose is too complex for us to understand. And maybe it was not meant to understand immediately what's the point of life in the world, in fact. So are there any questions or somebody wants to say something about this? No, if not, then we can disconnect and we see each other tomorrow. Don't forget to study for this little quiz. It's 5 questions. You get like a certain situation and you have to say this characteristic of life is homeostasis. This one is growth. This one is, so you have to put it into practice a little bit. So if you go to the characteristics of life, you get like a situation and you have to say what characteristic it most aligns with, okay? But you'll see tomorrow. It's not that hard, okay? I don't even think if you paid attention today, you don't even have to study. But I always do, okay? But if you paid attention, you should be fine. So we see each other tomorrow, and have a very nice day, guys.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Good day.